Salute, salute, salute. So, Sean Porter says that Terrence Bud Crawford was his toughest competition. And he also said that fighting Errol Spence was probably his best performance. I'm going to talk about that. This is Boxing Nocturnal Thoughts. I salute you. What's happening, man? Terrence Bud Crawford, man, in response to Errol Spence dominating your Dana Zugas and saying, I'm coming to take your belts. Terrence Bud Crawford, he says, I'm going to come and beat Errol Spence, and then I'm going to beat your cheerleader, twin Charlo, Jermell Charlo, right? I'm going to talk about in this video real quick, and then I'm going to get out y'all way. First of all, man, Sean Porter, I think he did a great interview with Brian Custer on The Last Man Standing. I do think, in my opinion, that he contradicted himself a couple of times, but I think he spoke his truth. You know what I'm saying? I think he's a straight up and honest guy, but I think also, you know, he contradicted himself, and he really goes out of his way to respect his father and not throw his father under the bus. Kenny Porter was a hell of a trainer, hell of a father. I tip my hat off to Kenny Porter. Not saying I agree with everything he does and says and the way he trains, but he had success. Sean Porter was a two-time champion. You know what I'm saying? And I think he contradicted himself with some of the answers he gave Brian Custer in the interview. One thing he said that I thought I disagreed with, I know I disagreed with, let me know what y'all think in the comments below, but I disagree when he say that Errol Spence tried to beat him at his own game. Now, I understand what he was saying. He was saying that Terrence Bud Crawford fought Terrence Bud Crawford style against Sean Porter, or against himself. He was saying that Errol Spence chose or opted to fight Crawford style against Crawford. But what I don't think he said correctly, he said that he tried to beat me at my own game. And in my opinion, Errol Spence successfully beat Errol Spence successfully beat Sean Porter in Sean Porter's own fighting style. In my opinion, Errol Spence clearly beat Sean Porter, being a better version of Sean Porter. Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. Now, I do agree with Sean Porter where he says Errol Spence, if they ran it back and fought again, Errol Spence might fight him differently, because I've heard Errol Spence say the same thing. If I could do it again, I might do it a different way. You know what I'm saying? Where, you know, I'm going to preserve and reserve some, you know, I'm not going to fight him the same way. I'm going to fight him more of a style that's going to look more clean, a more dominant looking performance. You know what I'm saying? That was a very murky fight. It left some people being able to argue and debate besides the 11th round knockdown. Now, also, I think that Sean Porter was being a great son and not throwing his father, Kenny Porter, under the bus. But I think it just made him, it paint him into a corner where he has to contradict himself. Where Kenny Porter said, I knew I was going to throw in the towel based off of the training. I knew I was going to throw in the towel before they even fought. And he didn't train the way I wanted him to train. And Sean Porter agrees with his father. Sean Porter says, I didn't train the way my father was asking me to train. But then you have to kind of turn around and say, but I trained just as hard for Terrence Bud Crawford as I trained for Errol Spence. I understand what he's saying, because I know Sean Porter is going to always train hard. Physically, he's a gym rat. You can tell he naturally is not really a boxer. He's naturally a football player or a wrestler. But for him to be as successful as he was as a boxer, he had to do a whole lot of extra stuff that a Terrence Bud Crawford or Errol Spence might not ever had to do, because naturally they just got better gifts You know what I'm saying? So Sean Porter always physically is going to train super hard. But I think Sean Porter, when he was getting ready for Errol Spence, I think he had a bigger chip on his shoulder. And I think that physically and mentally and spiritually, he was able to have more of a peak and elevate himself to the best of his ability. I think when he fought Terrence Bud Crawford, physically he might have trained very hard, but I don't think his heart, I don't think his spirits, I don't think his, you know what I'm saying, I don't think he was totally in that fight to win that fight. You know what I'm saying? It was a friendly competition, and it was a way of my farewell fight. I know I'm going to retire. Terrence Bud Crawford has been my friend. We go way back, and I'm not gonna lay down for Terrence Bud Crawford, but I'm gonna give him a great fight, because steel sharpens steel. But I'm not trying to break this dude into pieces. I'm trying to give him a great fight and kind of let the best man, let the chips fall where they may, let the best man win. Friendly exhibition, friendly sparring, friendly competition. And when you know you're going into a fight and you know you're about to retire, and you know you're fighting your best friend, you know you're going to put a great foot forward, but not your absolute deadliest best foot forward. You're going to hold back. Like the real Marlo said, there was times where Sean Porter getting a good shot, getting to the clinch, and he was kind of patting Terrence Bud Crawford to say, you know, good job. You know, it's like he was already saying, that's okay, that's it, boom, boom, boom. It was friendly gestures, friendly energy. It was just, he wasn't the same fighter, and he admitted that he didn't train the same way for Terrence Bud Crawford in the interview. Go check it out. Last Man Standing, Brian Custer, Sean Porter, great interview. You know what I'm saying? I take nothing away from it, but I take nothing away from Sean Porter. You know what I'm saying? He's speaking his truth. Like I said, I just don't agree with everything he says. I think he contradicted himself a couple of times. But I think he was speaking his truth. Boom. Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, it's one thing for him to fight Errol Spence. We haven't seen the peak of Errol Spence. We haven't seen the peak of Terrence Bud Crawford. Those two fighters are going to bring out the best of each other, and we'll see who has the highest peak. Me personally, I think Errol Spence has a higher peak than Terrence Bud Crawford. But let's look into what he said about Jermell Charlo, because a lot of people really believe and really think that Terrence Bud Crawford can beat Jermell Charlo. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's a great fight. It's a great fight, and I'm not gonna say he can't beat Jermell Charlo. You know, Brian Castano gave Jermell Charlo a run for his money, and he's gonna have to make some adjustments to win this rematch. And Terrence Bud Crawford is slick. He said, if he beats Brian Castano, then I'm gonna beat Jermell Charlo. But I'm going to be honest, in my opinion, just real quick and get out y'all way. I think Jermell Charlo might be a little bit too much for a Terrence Bud Crawford. You know, Jermell Charlo, his conditioning, the way he can carry power into the late rounds. I'm just being honest. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. But to me, he's just like Agitas Kavalauskas 3 times as great. And Agitas Kavalauskas, the Green Machine, I really honestly think if he wasn't a front runner, and if he had better conditioning and better stamina and a little bit more skills, I think he could have beat Terrence Bud Crawford. I mean, Terrence Bud Crawford made the adjustments and he knocked Agitas Kavalauskas out. But those first couple of rounds, Agitas Kavalauskas was catching Terrence Bud Crawford, hurting Terrence Bud Crawford, stumbling Terrence Bud Crawford, and you could see where he just, you know, really didn't have a gas tank. You could see when his energy and when everything started to fade. And I take nothing away from Terrence Bud Crawford. He made adjustments. But Agitas Kavalauskas, I think, was coming off the couch. And he's a front runner. And his conditioning and his stamina really isn't that great. You see the same thing he did to Ortiz. He started off great, and then he started to just gas out. So if he had a gas tank like a Jermell Charlo, and the abilities of Jermell Charlo, and you can carry your power into the later rounds, and your reflexes and your conditioning and your intensity and all that can stay consistent for a 12 round. If he was a 12 round fighter, I think he might have got the best of the Terrence Bud Crawford fight. I could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? We know what happened in that fight. But Jermell Charlo, to me, is a better fighter than Agitas Kavalauskas. you know. But Jermell Charlo, sometimes he can, and he was getting outboxed by Tony Harrison until he knocked him out. And Brian Castaño did give him fits. And Brian Castaño is not as great as a boxer or have the cat-like reflexes or the abilities of Terrence Bud Crawford. So it would be a great fight. But I just think it's a fight that is more fantasy and more of a distraction to kind of, just pick at Errol Spence. But in reality, y'all let me know what y'all think. In my opinion, I think Jermell Charlo would probably knock Terrence Bud Crawford out. I kind of think Errol Spence might knock Terrence Bud Crawford out, but we going to see about all of that, hopefully. Nocturnal Thoughts, man. Salute, salute, salute. Peace, man. Blessings. Bow.